Hey, good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the curriculum committee meeting of 10/16. Note that all committee members are here. I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda with the modification.
So
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yep.
Hi, how you doing? We're glad to have Jeff joining us today. And I think the agenda is self-explanatory. Jeff did a great job coming in earlier in the year to the full board to talk about where we were headed with the middle school schedule. And he is here today to walk us through what our administrative recommendation is at a high level. And then what we hope will happen over the next few months to make this a reality at some point in the future. So welcome, Jeff.
Thanks. Are we bringing up the PowerPoint? Or are we talking through it? Yeah.
No, we'll bring it up.
Okay. Then I'll let you run. Oh, that's yeah. No. Just this amount of trust is amazing. Unless you really want to admire the title slide, we'll move on to this kind of what we did here. And this was me putting together a presentation for our staff back in August. We spent 3 days with Michael Reddig in early August talking about the schedules. There's been desire on behalf of a lot of our staff who've been there for a while to really look at our bell schedule and try to find ways to improve it. And so in doing so, we did some research there. We had a scheduling committee prior to Mr. Reddig coming in and ran into a lot of different possible barriers. And that is because different parts of the middle school have different needs or desires at some level. And so right now what we have is something that we're used to and comfortable with. And so it's hard for us to kind of get outside of that box and think what could be when we already know what we have. And there's things that we really like about it, there's things we really don't like about it as well. So the goal of this was kind of go through and just talk through how those days with Mike Reddig went and how we got to where we are now. So what we did is we asked staff, like, what do you think would be a characteristic of an ideal schedule? And we let them write them all down. What you see in the left column of this sheet here are the things that staff came up with as attributes of an ideal schedule. So anything from fewer transitions for kids to lengthening classes to some things around more structured win, which maybe may or may not be tied to a schedule. Anything that they basically put down, we put up here and then asked them to rank them, which we'll come back to a little bit later. But then we use this kind of as a measuring stick against different types of schedules. So we looked at different options. We ended up coming back to this and saying, okay, with this option, how does it fit with these criteria? So that staff knew there was some level of staff engagement in saying how we evaluated what we were possibly looking at. So that's what this looks like. They're not all filled in. But we'll come back to that a little bit later. So what we looked at in an ideal sense is right now, less than half of our day is spent in core subjects. And that is far below what is typical, not only in Wisconsin, but nationwide. In fact, nationwide, you will see somewhere between 2/3 to 3/4 of time in a middle school spent in core instruction. Now we have a very robust non-core class offerings, and those are good things for our kids, but we are far below where we need to be with our core instruction. So we're trying to get that tipped back towards that direction. So here's some things that we could do. So the first thing we looked at was just keeping our current schedule and replacing homeroom with an extra ELA block. So all of our classes would stay at 44 minutes, but ELA would be 80 minutes a day. We talked about also just going to a double ELA, double math block, and then reducing our core on-core offerings. In looking at that, that usually causes people's eyeballs to kind of pop out of their head a little bit. So then you dial that back to what would be a compromise. And you go to like, well, what if we did 1.5 ELA and 1.5 math? So you're still compromising some of your on-core offerings, but not as much as you would if you doubled both ELA and math. And then we looked at this 6-period day option, which I'm going to talk about probably predominantly after we get through kind of these other options. So the reason we kind of landed on this 6-period day is because we really wanted to maintain a lot of our encore classes. We want to keep kids experimenting and trying different things. So when they get to the high school level, they kind of have an idea where they might want to go with our electives there. We also wanted to try to increase our core. And the doubling of the ELA in math just did not sit well with anybody and would really negatively impact our current staffing. So there's not just a course impact, there's a culture impact that comes with that as well. And if it's the right thing to do, it's something to consider. But I think we're looking for something maybe a little bit different. Likewise with the 1.5 math and ELA, you're still really, you're adding another whole block in there, and it's really still compromising your encore potentially. And then you also are looking at creating a distance between math and ELA in your science social studies, because your math and ELA are going to be perceived as kind of your more important core subjects, and your science social studies may be perceived as not as important. And one of the things we talked about is we really want to try to get to the point where our science instruction and our social studies instruction is really complementing our math and ELA instruction in those courses versus it being separate in its entirety. So we wanted to try to keep some level of, equality between our core classes. So here's where we got at the 6-period day. Mr. Reddick brought this as an example schedule to us from a city in New York, and I cannot remember the name of it. I think Tim might, it's Chautauqua or Chappaqua. Yep. There we go. And it was something that they used because it was a school, a very similar community to ours, which had a lot of high achievement with students, but also wanted to add some level of encore classes into its middle school curriculum, but wanted to also maintain a focus on the core instruction. This was the compromise they came up with, which gets you to 58-minute classes. Still have a 30-minute lunch. Still have your win session, which for us is like contact time at the high school level, where you have teachers available for academic support. It does get rid of the homeroom that's in our current schedule, but you would still get all of your course meeting every single day, which was one of the things I think we liked for consistency purpose. And then you do have to then compromise your electives and exploratory courses to meeting every 3 days versus every 2 days, or the ones that are meeting every day would mean 2 out of 3 days. What does that do for us? It gets us a lot more time in core instruction. I'll be able to kind of get you some details on that in the next slide. It gets us longer blocks. So we can be more efficient with our times. We have fewer transitions during the day. We also are able to maintain having elective choices and still have that contact time that a lot of our staff want to keep. Our challenges that we have to navigate with the schedule is that we don't have the homeroom, so we have to think about how we handle music lessons and some of those other tasks that we did during homeroom with our student services lessons and other student academic support. We do lose time in electives in this schedule, and that's just a given. If you're going to increase time in core, and you're not going to lengthen the school day, something has to give someplace. And then the addition of the core subject staffing is going to be something that needs to be navigated, because if we're going to keep our class sizes with the schedule, that would be challenging for us to do with our current staffing. We would have to add some staffing. It kind of goes back to what I just said about, if you're going to increase core instruction time, you need people to teach the classes, and that's going to cause an increase in some core instruction there. Make it work. This was one of the hardest things, I think, for our encore staff to really come to terms with, because here's what really happens in terms of time spent. So what you get with this 6-period day is you get 42 hours of additional instruction in your course each year. A lot of that comes from getting rid of the homeroom, but some of it also comes from reducing your time in your encore classes. Now, did a little bit of math on this because it is my background. And I looked at this from a standpoint of when you're meeting in longer chunks of time, especially in some of our classes that are like lab encore classes, your music classes, your tech ed classes, your base classes, the amount of time you spend setting up and taking down is significant. So although you're losing some time in the sense of how much time you actually meet, you can be more efficient with your time in these encore classes. So even though you're losing, say, 8 hours of instructional time in some of these classes and 16 in Spanish too, the amount of time you spend actually in instruction and not in transition times actually alleviates that to some degree. Not completely, but it I used like 3 minutes as an example in tech ed. I said, you just assume 3 minutes at the front end and 3 minutes at the back end. And the number of times you save that 3 minutes now because you have fewer classes meeting for longer periods of time, you actually save a little over 3 of those 8 hours, just assuming only 3 minutes. So those are how the hours fall out. Again, this is a harder thing, I think, for some of our encore classes because it takes away some of their instructional time and the number of times we're meeting. But it does really get us back into a closer to 2/3 ratio with our core instruction. It's going to be slightly less than 2/3 given the win time that we have put in there, but at least gets us much closer to where we were hoping to be with that sort of issue we were trying to navigate. If we were to do something like this where we went to a 4 block, for example, with math and English meeting more frequently, like twice as long, you increase your math and English minutes by quite a bit, but then you lose time in science and social studies, and you also lose a lot more time in your encores. So this was where you going to more of the extremes where you put 75% of your time more into your core subjects. The compromise on the other things we felt was maybe not the best option for what we're hoping to accomplish at our middle school programming. This is one of the examples, and you can do this for all the other schedule options as well. The other thing that when we circle back on that initial criteria that we had staff kind of outline for us about what an ideal schedule would be, here's where they ranked things as far as importance. So that total column is what they felt was most important in an ideal schedule, because they voted 1 through 13, I think it is. And so the totals are their responses. And then, so they're sorted in order with the things that staff felt were most important. So those top things: fewer transitions, longer blocks, lengthening core classes, good pace and feel, and more structured time while still maintaining elective choices with the top 6. And if you look at all the things with a 6-period day, it checks all of the boxes on the top 6 criteria that staff felt were important in the ideal schedule. And the structured wins, I think we've got some things we can do creatively within the 6-period day schedule that might actually help us alleviate some of the concerns around basic classes and other things that we were doing with our homeroom time, as how we might spread out win across parts of our day as well. So we're working through the details on that. I think the biggest drawback to this 6-period day, from purely an educational standpoint, I think our languages program and trying to get kids to the point where they're ready for Spanish or French 3 when they get to high school. We'll have to backwards map that programming through our entire 5-8 program to make sure that we can make that work, so that they're just still meeting that benchmark or can meet that benchmark, so that if kids wanted to get all the way to Spanish 6 or French 6 as a senior at the high school, they could still do so by navigating our middle school curriculum in conjunction with the intermediate schools. But that would be probably one of the bigger problematic things we'd have to address. Otherwise, I think most of our curriculum and our encores would be affected a little bit, but not to the point where we drastically change it wholesale.
Jeff, when you look at the numbers, so what is the first one? Transitions, fewer transitions, total 42. What does that 42 mean?
So there was, I think, 15 people who voted. And like the thing they felt was most important, they ranked as 1. Then the second most important 2. And this is the total of all the votes for fewer transitions.
So we're playing golf with the numbers.
Correct. Yes. So they're in reverse order. So like, yeah,
Right.
if everybody had voted fewer transitions and current as number 1, I think that number would be 15 or 17,
Thanks.
something like that. Yeah. But it was somewhere in the lower numbers. Yeah.
So homeroom is something that happens every day
Right now, yes.
in the morning.
No,
Or-
homeroom is throughout the day, depending upon when you have it. So it's moved throughout the day right now. And we have in the morning advisory/win. So
Oh.
2 days out of the week, we have advisory, 3 days we have win, which is contact time for kids to get help during that time as well. So I think reasonable people can disagree on this, but one would say our advisory, our win, and our homeroom times combined aren't being as efficient as they maybe could be. And I think that was part of where we felt there was some fluff on our schedule to borrow from to get more directed instructional time in our actual classes. And then also still provide some time for kids to get additional support outside of class, but not nearly as much as they currently have with the flexibility with home.
So homeroom isn't where they do their SEL.
No,
Okay, that
no,
happens.
that's more in the
advisory.
advisory time, yeah.
Jeff, how do you envision the PLCs functioning with this schedule? Because that's,
So the nice thing about this schedule is not only are the classes longer, the preps are longer. So when you meet, we still are able to schedule, I believe, we will be able to schedule our content areas into your PLCs like we do now. But now instead of meeting for 44 minutes and feeling like they're rushing through things, you're gonna have 58 minutes, which will help them, I think, dig in more, especially as we improve our use of data, looking at how students are learning and are not learning, and then what are we gonna do to respond to that? I think that 44 minutes isn't allow us to really sometimes dig in and kind of figure out what the problem is, how we're gonna solve it, and then what next steps are. It's just, it's a tight timeline. So I'm hoping that that longer prep time will help with our planning as well. But that will remain to be seen. It will not be, because they're still meeting every single day and they're gonna have the prep every single day. They'll still have the content PLC time every day. So that won't change. It'll just be longer. So hopefully it should be better.
so when we went to the block at the high school, they were able to have common planning times within. Well, in our case, let's say all freshmen English have a common planning time.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you're gonna be able to fit that into the schedule?
we have that now. We should be able to do it with the new one as well.
Okay, good.
That's part of, we're working on, okay, theory, it's great. Let's try to get this and schedule it, like with our
Right.
current kids. We're trying to figure out a way to kind of use our current scheduling software and maybe some outside software as well to kind of get us to run this schedule and say, okay, if we were to run it with our 23, 24 kids, what would it look like? I know what it looks like with current staffing in current classrooms and current space in the middle school. It puts your class, with current no staff increase at all, it puts your current class size averages going to 27 to 28, which is just, it's not going to cut it. There would be some things we have to talk about what we're doing with space with the current middle school as well. We did the new middle school 3 years from now, not an issue, but with the current middle school, we have to get creative with how we did it. I think we can do it. It just means that for 2 years, there'd be some kind of growing pains as we implement the schedule and kind of get flexible with, what is my space as a teacher and how we kind of share spaces until we can get to the next step.
Can you put a number to the increase staffing?
So I think if you're looking at a building of 720 kids, you would look at having, like we currently have 3.5 and 3 teams, it would go to 4 teams across the board. I think when you're looking at over the next 2 years, depending on whether we're looking at implementing this next year or the year after, based on the class sizes we have now, we have a fairly large 7th grade class. If we did this next year, we probably need 4 full teams next year for that class. But we have 3.5 currently at 7th grade. That was suffice for 7th grade. So this would increase the 8th grade team by 1 whole teacher per course, looking at probably 4 FTE for next year. If you went out another year, which not sure is good or bad at this point, depending on what the schedule looks like. You're looking at probably 3.5 teams at each grade level because you're looking at about 315, 325 kids per class. So you could pull back half of a team off of that probably and still get by with class sizes of 23 while you're going through that. And that would be then 2 or 3 staff members, two. Yeah, to be half of each 22. Then at some point you'd have to get to, as your school grows, and it's really driven by the number of kids. If you're at about 3, you stay around 320, you can get by with 3.5. Once you get to like 360, you're at that break point of going to another full team and then going from there.
I guess when I look at it from a perspective of looking at a focus on instruction, one of the things that is probably the strongest indicators of that is our time on task and being able to bring more time to those core areas, which is kind of one of our pieces. And Jeff did a nice job overviewing it, but it was to increase time in the core while also maintaining options for exploratory areas. So I think the schedule does that, but I would wholeheartedly support the staffing we need to do it because I think that's the right direction to go from an instructional standpoint and an achievement standpoint. So I think what we have found is we've been relatively flat with some of our achievement at the high school. And it's not, I think when we take a look at what we're asking our staff to do and relatively kids moving through 8 periods and 8 classes a day with 44 minutes, we need to kind of break that up in some way to create a different environment. And I think this is a great step in the right direction.
I also think that the 58 minutes allows us to have a vehicle for doing some different things instructionally that we know are good for kids, but like we struggle to do in a 44-minute period because it's a new thing to learn, and when you're learning something new and you're already tight on time, like it's a challenge. If we already had some of those things in place and we went from a 58 to a 44, and you had to squeeze it, it would still be challenging, but not as bad. And I think the 58 minutes gives us a chance to really kind of try some different things and move some of our other instructional plans forward as well, which I was, for me personally, my number one was longer blocks of time. I really feel like you can do some things instructionally in longer blocks of time that are more challenging to do in shorter blocks of time, and then you fall back on what's on fire and what's easy, and that sometimes, although works on some level, it's not always best. I think this gives us a chance to get more towards that. I did go to my last slide, just want to make sure you have an idea of like what the plan is, because we're here. And assuming that we are able to make this work from an FE standpoint, we're going to have to look at the scheduling the sandbox and start looking at that. I have staff feedback I received after I did this with them and let them ask their questions, and so I've looked through that, and I'm going to bring staff back together and talk about that, and also just if we were to look at doing this next year, like what would that mean for us? I think they need to know, like, here's the impact. It's not just, hey, we all have the same classrooms that we have now. We all have the same comfort we have now. There's going to be a little bit of give there, and I want to make sure we talk through how we navigate any of those barriers if we're going to make this work. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it will not come without challenges, but it is something that I think if we can make work financially, it is a good thing for us to get in the spot we need to with our core instruction. And then we need to, at some point then later, and maybe October, November is ambitious, but need to keep it on my radar so I stay on it. Yeah, and that is even start bringing this, if we're going to move forward with it, talk to our families, talk to our kids, even say, okay, like what kind of things do you have concerns about? How do we make sure we navigate those and answer any questions as well?
I'm in support of this change, and I think that when we have, and the sooner we vote, if we do it next year, the better, I think, because the more instructional time we have for our students, that's what is in their best interest for learning. We have some academic goals that we're trying to achieve. And I think that this change, it can directly impact those needs of our students. So.
We need to get our kids in the middle school growing. And bring some more time into the core instruction, I think is one of the key pieces to that. And so I think this is, when we looked at all the schedules, I really think for what we're trying to accomplish as a school and as a district, this is probably the best fit and gets us moving in a little bit better balance for middle school with where we're at construction.
I can concur with Katie. I think it's really a win-win when we're looking at the academic goals, the concerns that everybody has to try to get back to pre-pandemic numbers, increase core time. I appreciate the Encore people and their frustration with losing. No one likes to lose time on a day-to-day basis. It's not. It really doesn't. I don't want to say it's insignificant because it is, but it's. I would say it's manageable when you weigh it with the end of the whole end results. And so I commend you guys for all the work you put into this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I honestly think that the harder part to navigate is going to be every 3 days versus every other day for our classes. I think the time they will actually be able to gain that back. I really do. I think it's the harder part, I think, is when they get to the point of I see my kids every 3 days, and for some of our teachers, like who have a good chunk of kids, that it's not going to make it easier for them to get some consistency there. But I think overall, there's going to be some give and take in some of your side of it.
Well, they do. I mean, yeah, our teachers has to be thrilled to be getting 58 minutes to work on things in 44, you're setting up, you're taking down, and how much production time do you really get in those kind of lab situations, so. There's some benefits there too. Passing time is the same,
We worked it out with passing times the same right now, I think. That's something that, you know, when you look at how you do your lunches and your wins and how we kind of play with that a little bit, there's some room probably for a little bit of play with that. I mean, and I would say for middle school kids, like right now we're at 1 minutes, like 5 would maybe be nice. 8 would be dangerous. Like, I love seeing the kids in the hallway, but after about 4 minutes, it's like, okay, time to go to class.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, it would be nice, I think, for our kids and our staff to have like another minute in there just to use the restroom and whatnot. And I think though some of that too is our current building, current setup. And I think some of that is even going to get alleviated when you look at the new building and where we have bathrooms and how we have the room set up and the learning community set up too. So that's probably even something that might change just with the change of facility at some point. So maybe.
so are you looking at some sort of a dress rehearsal later in the spring to see, just try it out, or are you looking at basically just going to the next fall?
So I think anytime you pilot something, there are potentially some benefits for it, and essentially some drawbacks. I think with curriculum, it's always good to kind of take it out for a test run. If you're gonna change a daily schedule, how do you try it out? Like you don't have buy-in, you don't have necessarily the, hey, like we're gonna be doing this for a while, so I'm gonna work on changing my practice. It's the, I'm gonna try it, and if I don't like it, and then I'm going to, but I'll say, personal story, personal experience. In my previous district, I was a teacher in an 8th grade day. We went to the 4 block. And it might not shock you that I was a vocal person about, study schedule. And at that time, I was not in favor of the 4 block. And when I went to it, after a year and a half in it, I was like, okay, I think this is actually better for kids. Now, I was the direct opposite of that when we started. So if we had tried it out for three weeks or 3 months, all you would have done is given me fuel for me to continue to fight that battle, and I would have been wrong. And I think sometimes if you can look at something and go, this is what we have to do, change is hard no matter what you do. And if you can look at it for what it is and say, this is what's going to be good for kids, as adults will figure it. And 99% of the time we do. It's just the getting past the, I'm comfortable and now I have to try something different. That's the hardest part. And now, whether you're in education or anything, quite frankly. So I think this is not, I don't think it'd be wise for us to pilot a schedule of any sorts, because you're not going to really get into it to really know whether it's the right thing or not. And then you're just going to end up with a lot of negativity, potentially. We thought, we did talk about it. It was a conversation we had, but Mike Reddick said, his work, he was far stronger. He said, don't even think about it. He said, it's a bad idea. I think it was pretty strong, but he has been doing this for a while too, so maybe he knows what it's. Makes sense.
So what we're hoping for, if you're comfortable, and if you need time to think about it, we can do that too. But what we'd really like would be some kind of action to endorse this in concept, so we can then build this into budget development. I mean, obviously, you're going to have to approve the budget in the spring, but this would give us a green light. We can move forward. We can move forward with these conversations with the staff and say this has been shared with the board. Board supports this general direction. We would bring this into the full board meeting next month as well, of course. But that's what we're hoping for. We could have that.
Make a motion to continue with the plan.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank
Oh,
you
thank
and your
you all.
team for all the hard work on this.
Yeah, thank you all. This is not a small thing, and it's a little bit of an investment, but I think it's an investment that's going to pay off for us in the long run. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me and taking action on this.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Do you like your mouse back?
You can leave it there.
Okay,
So,
that,
yeah.
circling back, this then brings us to the special curriculum presentations, goals, objectives. And so at our last meeting, we talked, this was something that we were gonna focus on to get a sense of how to guide the presenters. Thinking, I don't know if every year, but periodically we get different people on the committee or on the board, and they're hoping for something different than they get. And so, thoughts any of us have about what you'd like to see at the curriculum presentations twice a year?
Who is on, who's scheduled for this year? I can't remember.
We can get that
Okay,
for you by the time we're off this agenda item.
okay. I think it's helpful to know like goals, what they're working at, you know, what are the main focus goals for learning in each area, or perhaps what the challenges might be and what they might want us to consider if they have any needs from the school board financing, but I don't know what so I have not participated in these.
right.
Last year was my first
Right.
one, so it was hard to
So
know.
I have a bias against petitioning the board for financing at these
Okay.
meetings. I mean, there's a process to do that. And
And that's not it.
and I've been to some where that's the entire presentation.
Oh, okay.
And so I would caution against it, but if the majority of both of you think that's would be worth doing, the board might want to hear that. I certainly won't stand against it. Last year, we had some really interesting presentations. Ag really stood out in that they gave an overview and some of the key activities that take place throughout the year. As a board member, I find that helpful because we, even though we're on the curriculum committee, we're not privy to the entire curriculum unless we decide to spend hours of in-depth research. And I think the board as a whole at least can get a high level insight into what's going on. And so your point about what are you focusing on this year? You know, what are some of the goals that you have, and are you going in some sort of, is there some kind of new direction you guys are going, you're looking at? Something like that to me makes perfect sense. I don't think we need a course by course. I mean, there's not time for that. They
No.
have, what is it, half hour?
Half an hour, yeah, 25
And-
minutes.
And
actually,
so
with the transition.
clearly, if there's something new they're doing, I think that would be really, what are they doing and why are they doing it? Or what are they thinking about doing and why, and how does that affect achievement?
Yes.
I like the achievement piece to be part of what they're talking about. What are they, how does achievement fit into their
Yes,
goals?
I agree with you.
I agree with the whole presentation of the ag department. They did a really great job of explaining what they were doing here. There was a lot more, if there was a structure to pattern, I'd use that one, you know, that the other ones could follow. I appreciated what they were presenting, so.
So to answer Katie's earlier question, who's up this year? For your January 29th meeting, it'll be alternative education, which is, again, an area you have listed in your goals for this year. Student services team, music, and physical education and health. And then for your April 29th, it'll be K-6 English Language Arts, EL/bilingual education, special education, and then social studies. Those are the teams that'll be into your meetings this year. Okay, I think that gives us good feedback.
I think it's all about it. Yeah, if they follow what he was presenting there, I think that makes a lot of sense.
So very similar to previous years, make sure to connect back to the student achievement aspect.
Yes.
And what we also heard last year after the first round was the ag presentation was a good reference point. So, good, very good. Thank you.
Okay, then that brings us to item 6, new course proposals.
Yes.
We have 2 of them.
We have 2, and so, these are 2 high school courses. The first one is Spanish language arts for heritage speakers. So for roughly 5 years, we've had a heritage speaker Spanish course at the high school. Initially, the numbers were fairly low to that, but as our EL population has grown, so has the membership of that course grown. And since we were approaching the point at which we might have to break into 2 sections anyways, and because we are seeing, as we've built this out and we're moving to, more of a multi-year curriculum cycle and needs to differentiate for different learners, the feedback from the world language team at the high school was the time had come to really create a second course. So we'd have a Spanish language arts 1 and a Spanish language arts 2. Each would have kind of a 2-year curriculum that students would loop through. So even though it's 2 courses, in some respects, they actually function as a 4. Between the 2 courses, they could encompass for a student 4 years of instruction with kind of the 2-year cycle of topics for each. I really commend the team for looking at this. They've had a chance to talk with some of the other schools in our area that also offer Spanish language arts courses. They've looked at some of the recommendations from national groups as well. And we, again, this is partly a response to growth and it's partly a response to as the course has matured and we've kind of broadened the content that's covered in the course. Long term, we have hopes to be able to provide a credential for our students called a seal of biliteracy. Now that would not be only for students in this course, but the seal of biliteracy are a set of activities and assessments that if a student completes, then they can get that endorsement on graduation, that they've had a set of experiences that would prepare them to be dually competent in languages. So obviously this would support that for heritage speakers, but there would also be options to earn the seal for non-heritage speakers as well.
So if we institute this class, then that will give these students the opportunity to get that certification, or it would take what else
It would be
need
part
to-
of the process.
Okay,
In and of itself, it would not be completely self-sufficient, but it'd be a big step for our heritage population. Our non-heritage population, we already have
right.
the substantial course sequence.
Mhm.
We would need to add in some other elements and
Okay.
it's something where we could come back to
Sure.
you later in the year and
Okay.
kind of explain more about what the seal is.
Okay,
It's not only about completing these types of world language experiences. That's an important part of it though.
I commend them too for coming up with this option, having sat through that class with Ms. Balcazar.
Yes, Jenny.
Is that right?
Yes.
I think that having this option is also in the best interest of the kids.
Mhm.
Because it provides them with the continuity and ability to grow and able to differentiate some of their needs too throughout so I think it's a good option, so.
I think it allows them to focus on the higher level skills needed for the
Right.
next step. That teaching a broad group of kids is just not possible.
Right.
So, motion to any other questions or comments? Motion to approve,
Second,
all in favor?
Thank you. The next course is called Unified Physical Education. And so the intention here, and there's some other schools in our area. I think Sun Prairie is one that has a course of this nature. Cudahy has something like this. So when Nick Conrad came over to us from Cudahy, he was able to bring some background on this as well. This is something that Tiffany and Nick and the FIAD team and in particular have been working on for a few months. The concept here is you would have a blended class. So this is not, if you've ever heard the term adaptive Phi-Ed, this is not that. This is intended to have a blended population that's very experiential and out-of-school activity based, not entirely, but with more out-of-school activities than you might see in your typical Phi-Ed course. You know, it's not uncommon for us to take kids out maybe for something like bowling, but if you were to look at this, you would have more lifetime skills, more functional skills, maybe some special opportunities for kids. I know horseback riding experiences is something that the planning team has, talked about. And so as you go down, this offers some great opportunities for peer interaction. It offers opportunities for leadership development. It also offers more inclusive opportunities for some students with disabilities. And I want to, stress that these activities are may includes, but these are, again, some of the things that, came up is that a variety of field trips to see what the community offers, bowling, disc golf and golf, swimming, biking, strength and conditioning and cardio, which you might see in a lot of our traditional Phi-Ed courses, yoga component, goal ball, different types of sports, archery. Now, one thing I will say, and this is something we've talked about, is because this would be more activity-based, there might be some higher costs associated with this. And so if we were to come down a little bit more to the cost section, okay, financial impact. So for the initial equipment cost, some of that would be funded out of special ed. We would pick the others out of our instructional resources budget for the startup money. One thing we've had some conversations about would be that fourth bullet point, fees, field trip, community outings, because that would encumber some greater costs, some of which certainly we would pick up within budgets. This would have a course fee as proposed for $40. This wouldn't be our highest course fee, but it would be a higher course fee than most course fees. On the other hand, as we've talked about it, there's no question that the opportunities for all of the kids that you'd get as a family would be really greater than you'd see in most Phi-Ed courses. But as we certainly, because we know that fees are important to you, we wanted to make sure we highlighted, this is a great course. So, I want to stress this. Unanimously, we think this is absolutely the right kind of opportunity to add to the course book. But we did want you to have an awareness of the fee. We think it's a supportable fee. If you would like to see the fee to look different, we would still recommend moving the course forward, and then we would just go back and see what our options would be from the financial aspect.
So one of the things, just from a historical standpoint, if we go back a number of years, we used to charge a fee for just a regular Phi-Ed class when we went bowling. And that was a piece that when we brought fees forward at one point, this is 12, 13 years ago, and the board decided if we're going to require us to go bowling, we should pay for that. So that was a piece, then that fee came off, and then that was just something that we picked up then internally to make sure we could pay for that activity. So when this piece came forward and Tim and Tiffany asked me about the fee, I said, well, I'm not sure where we are philosophically on it, because it is really, I love the class, and I think it's a phenomenal class. So it's nothing about the class. It's about, are we comfortable with the $40 fee, something less, or no fee? And I think those are kind of your options. They threw out the $40 fee. There's still probably some, like Tim said, it's not the most expensive class we had, but it's kind of a philosophical piece of where you see us with what we want to charge for. And then also just kind of a financial piece is then if there isn't a fee, then we have to go back and determine kind of where we're going to get that from the money.
And kind of, to kind of swing back to the bowling conversation, when we were doing that, that was in particular for Phi-Ed courses below high school. We're allowed it. So like if sixth grade had a bowling unit, If you were a sixth grade family, you were going to pay that bowling fee. This isn't we have many phy ed courses at the high school. Nobody has to take this course. We don't know how much, that's why we're bringing it to you. We kind of want your temperature on this.
So I'm sure the goal is to have a significant number of student with needs
Yes, absolutely.
participating. I know they have a lot of medical costs typically associated with, some have more, some have less, obviously, but how do we do the fee without discouraging someone from participating? I mean, I know we have our student fee.
We can still waive, the people who can't afford it, there's still a waiver process for all of our fees. So that's what would still be in play.
So as long as they would know that well enough ahead so that they wouldn't decide not to choose it, we wouldn't know why they didn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be my one concern.
I look at this from a class, let's use my daughter who took phy ed class. She took lifetime. It was a great class. But I think when you look at, and part of what it was you wanted to be with your associated peers, but also you were doing things that were sometimes challenging. So I think that having something like this that builds the leadership of all the kids in the classroom and provides those activities. I love the class. I think it's a phenomenal
Great class.
It's just more, I asked him to bring the concept and the conversation about the fee here, just to see what our thoughts were on it, because I think we have this different opinions and maybe what we should do with that.
Do you think the fee will be like enough, or have we done the finances to figure out what kind of impact that would have?
Realistically, would still have to bring some things out of the building budget to support this, even with a $40 fee. A $40 fee seems not small, but when you think about the activities that are contemplated in the course, it adds up pretty quickly. So this is not intended to be a break-even fee. It's intended to kind of defray some of the costs of the course.
Okay.
And I think, to Mark's point, I mean, this is why we're bringing the conversation here, because, if you're eligible for free and reduced lunch, you're eligible for the fee waiver. And by and large, that's a really good yardstick for these types of conversations. But as Mark notes, some of the students in here that we hope will be in here will come from families that may have significant additional expenses out of school already, even though they're not qualifying for free and reduced lunch. There are additional expenses they're trying to cover, which I think is I think that's where you're coming from, right, Mark? Yeah.
I would suggest $800 is not going to cover a lot of expenses. If you think about a bowling outing, I mean, rather than have kids not participate because they're not in free and reduced, but they're not sure the family can do this thing. What do you think of no fee? Is that $800 going to break any budget?
That's what I was trying to get to that. I think, I don't know how many courses we do ask for fees. How many are there? Is it a common practice?
So, as a family, you pay a general fee. If you were to think about courses that are in this range or higher, there is a culinary arts course where we have more kind of food ingredient purchases than we would for the other FCS courses. So we charge a fee comparable to this if you elect into that course. If you are in say band or orchestra, unless you have your own course, the instrumental fees will actually be well above this. Those are the ones that kind of come to mind. We have other courses that might have a $10 or $15 fee, but when I think about courses that are higher than that, it would mainly be culinary arts and the instrumental music courses.
guess I'd agree, I don't know how that $800 to do anything, it's. I mean, your point, it kind of is it's the best word, it makes you think about it a little bit, I guess. Do you really want to do this or not? Maybe then filter something, but yeah. I'm probably okay with that.
Think from a parent's perspective, who has a kid with a disability, you're gonna put your child, you're working with your teachers on what classes you take. So they're gonna assess which child is gonna fit best into a class. We also have adaptive play. So this is kind of meant to be another option for kids. So, and I think that as far as like participation and stuff, you know, I think some of that will be vetted out just by the teachers, the parents, the IEP team, as far as like what's the most appropriate class to take, because that's kind of what my experience was. And then, and this would definitely be the conversation, like the financial piece. That's kind of why we brought it.
Yeah.
My take is not doing no fee.
Isn't
That was my take.
Yeah.
Because I think I looked at it as a fire class, that we need fire credits to graduate, this qualifies for that. I would just look at it that way.
Motion to disperse.
Motion to approve the course. Whatever it be.
No fee.
without the fee, is that the motion?
So second,
That's the motion.
so you made the motion, I seconded it.
Yeah.
I added it on.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
All right. Well, as we know what the motion is, not okay, and second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
I think when we present it, we'll represent this conversation there too as part of that. Before understands kind of where we were, and what discussion we had
Sure.
here. And then it can be presented from an open of it. Yeah.
And thank you for moving both of these courses forward. These are, I mean, we never bring anything to you that we don't think is a good addition to the course catalog, but these are two items we're really excited to have added to the catalog. So thank you for your support.
Are there others that you're working through? Like the-
I don't think you're going to see any next month.
Okay,
I think this is going to be it for the year.
okay.
Okay, spring 23 assessment data.
Yes, so your next meeting is November 30th, and when Amy and I met with Mark, by virtue of being able to move these course proposals to this month, we've basically cleared out next month's agenda to be fully on student performance data. And so I'm going to foreshadow a bit and then bring us back to the assessment data. So statewide assessment data, forward ACT, pre-ACT, those were released. You probably saw a little bit of that in our local media 6 days ago. This year's state accountability report cards will be publicly released on November 14th. So a little over 2 weeks before your meeting. So now, of course, between them and your meeting is the Thanksgiving holiday. We'll be posting board book before Thanksgiving. So you'll have a lot of time to look at the material in board book, and we'll work on kind of a high level summary. There'll be a lot in there, I'll tell you right now, but we'll also have kind of an executive summary with some of the key points as we see them. So that's kind of to set the stage for your November 30th meeting. I think what we would describe with kind of our look at our assessment data and what we've seen from Dane County and what we've seen from some of our benchmarks. We're still kind of pulling together our 20-some benchmark district data. Is, I think, first of all, kind of on the strong side, if you look at the combined ELA and mathematics combined grades 3 through 8 proficiency rates, we were the top district in Dane County for that, for the overall rates. Now, depending on grade level, it might look a little different. I would say kind of at a high level on the forward, we saw a general upward trend on ELA. On the forward, math was flat. Science saw slight gains, and social studies had an upward trend on the forward. For the ACT, ELA went down a little bit, not as much as before. Math did go down some. That's why we have improvement activities underway in mathematics this year. Science went up slightly. So the ACT picture was a little different than the forward picture, and we'll do a deeper dive onto that next month, but I would say, overall. Kind of stepping back, the biggest picture would be, we're continuing to see the bounce back from the pandemic, but it's not as even as we'd like to see, and that's really what's guiding a lot of our academic improvement efforts this year. And that's why it's really good that we have the achievement goal that we have that's focusing us on getting all the way back by the spring of 25. That's a very high level, but we'll have a lot of information for you next time. You'll have the report cards, you'll have those comparison tables for Dane County and our benchmark groups. We'll also have that achievement report, which if you were on the committee last year, the conversation was, don't bring that achievement report in the early spring. Accelerate the publication of the achievement report, bring it in with all of the state achievement data so we can process that all of the time as a curriculum committee and then the full board. So that's kind of the big picture and what to expect next month. Now, if you have, I think the attachments in the board book will be pretty comprehensive, but if you have anything in particular you want spotlighted, let us know. It doesn't have to be today. It can really be anytime, I'd say in the next 3 weeks as we look to pull this together. In terms of just the executive summary.
And in the summary, you'll compare it to the pandemic where we were at.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see kind of comparison in two lights. One is what's our comparison compared to our own performance. It goes back to pre-pandemic. And then you will also see how we compare right now compared with other districts in Dane County, compared with our benchmark districts. And if you've seen that table, this kind of tied into your achievement goal that kind of shows where we would need to be and where we need to go, we would have that filled in as well for last year's data.
And I did communicate with you guys, if you have any thoughts for down the road, are there any items that you came up with before tonight's meeting or that you might like to see at some time as we go through the next couple months? I will say we are going to be getting an update from Amy on the Act 20 process in March.
That was would be one thing that I would. And we're piloting math right now. We're doing that?
We are piloting math in K4.
Yes, yeah,
We'll be starting the review in 5-8
okay,
and then 7-8 ELA is in the pilot. right now.
yes. So the updates on those would be in the spring.
Yes.
On a kind of a high level, we've gone. I think of this as like slide ruler going to a calculator. You don't know how to use a slide ruler, never learn how to use it. With all of the technology that we have and the students learning stuff, and my own kids doing it, it's interesting to me how homework is done now. And I don't know, it seems like it's a process just to submit homework and things like that. And I wonder if a lot of time is spent on, and maybe I'm just too old and antique here, but it's such a different process, and I wonder if it hinders in learning in any way of the actual core stuff. And it seems like more is learning how to get this done. I don't know if you experienced that at all, instead of the actual learning material. So really more on a high level, does this impact instruction negatively, positively? Is there any impact? And I don't know how you gauge it. It's just something that I thought that could be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Expanded on. Does that make any sense, or is that just?
You're talking about things like when kids send up things to Schoology, et cetera. And
Yep.
some other things that they do.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's being used consistently. Use math, for example, but I think physics is. I was helping out, and it's like, man, I'm entering it in wrong, or like we just do it. It's like, no, this is the right answer, and then there isn't enough indication that what you're doing is right. It doesn't. I don't want to explain it. it doesn't give you enough feedback whether you're doing things right or wrong or. It's hard to explain.
So,
Just
like-
in doing it, it was,
What you're saying is that there's a problem, they're working through the problem online, but the way they have to submit their answer or the work. They know the answer, they know the work, they've done
Correct.
the work, but the way that needs to be submitted is.
yeah, and that's a good
Confusing
example. That's a
and
good
it's
example. So it's not,
counterproductive,
it's totally, it isn't measuring any of their ability
The
of that
knowledge,
material.
yeah.
It's more of the
Their
tool
ability to provide the response in the way it's set up to take the
with
response.
technology. And that could be, it's just the growing pains of that technology. And I get that, it's just a trade-off that you have. But when you thought of topics, that's one thing that came to mind as, is it a valuable thing to look into further?
And then what topics do you guys all really feel like pressing for the rest of the year? There are certain things that we've talked about in our meetings that find really good.
So it's already going to be a curriculum presentation, but related to your, one of the departments speaking in January, but proposals for alt ed is definitely something where we see a need to add potentially some additional programming. So it's something Brian Borowski's been working with the alt ed team. He and I have had some conversations. He, Lisa, John, and I are going to have some additional conversations. We'll have something sometime well, actually not sometime. I think we have it settled for, I want to say February. It's either January or February on our master plan. Likewise,
Education. This
Yep.
February and robotics
is January, yeah, and the robotics piece is coming back. I do think sometime in the spring. It's not the technology Ted was referring to. I think, Ted, that's good feedback, and we actually are going to, in the second half of the year for 7-12, reconvene a work group around Schoology and just kind of seeing what we can do to refine our use of it. And so student usability is obviously a big part of that conversation. But AI, I think Channel 3 did a nice job, and I think our students that participated with Chris Stanford and our teachers that participated with Chris Stanford really represented our district and their ideas very well. But it is something that's having an impact, particularly in the upper grades. And I do see at some point in the spring.
We have a slot for April.
Yeah, we're going to bring that in, and you're going to get probably some of the same people you saw on the Channel 3 piece, but coming in to talk about what we're seeing, what the implications are for education, both positive and potentially, challenges.
So, Andy, you're gonna give me a copy of this, but we just send this out to all the committee members, so they have their the same calendar. It's a rough calendar, but it's.
We could, in board book, we can put that under items for future meetings, just as a PDF attachment.
Great.
Yeah, we'll do that. So when you go back to look at this in a day or two, it'll be there.
And we had talked about having a visual calendar for the public. Is that where they would find that then? For our curriculum meetings, or is there a place the public can access that calendar?
Well, if we add that as a standing item in the future, under the items for future meetings, when the
Yeah.
public goes to the public version of board book, they'll be able to kind of see
Okay,
what's coming around the bend.
all right.
So
That's good.
I'll get that to you. You got annual meetings then. I'll get it to you tomorrow. We'll get it in
Thank you.
there. So,
And then I'll save it.
okay.
Okay. Any other? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.